we have ridden the second super light EMTB by Canyon. The first one was the Canyon Neuron ONfly, which was a Bosch SX powered EMTB, 55 Nm motor. So we were actually a bit surprised to see the new Canyon Spectral ONfly. It didn't come with a Bosch motor. It's got the TQ HBR50. You might think that's a bit strange. I mean, the Neuron is a lighter setup, less aggressive geometry, lighter tires, less suspension travel, while the Spectral ONfly is a longer travel bike, 160mm front, 150mm travel rear, mullet setup, burlier Maxxis Minion Exo Plus tires. So doesn't it really make sense having the burlier, heavier setup bike having a more powerful motor? Not necessarily. I mean, Canyon shouldn't be limited by the design choices of previous models when designing a new bike. Canyon just create the bike they want to make. And using the TQ HBR50, it's a weaker motor, even though it's 50 Nm. It's got a lower peak power at some 300 watts and much less power amplification. I'll get back to more details about the motor later in this review, but you could always check out my previous review if you want all the details. It's an advantage using such a small and compact motor. A small motor doesn't eat into the chainstays, it doesn't eat into the C-tube, it doesn't take away bottom bracket clearance, so it's easier designing the frame geometry you want around the smaller motor. And along with the small motor comes the small battery, 360 watt-hours. Canyon, some months ago, announced 580 watt-hours battery. Why didn't Canyon use that? I tried asking, but I didn't really get a proper answer. I think it's one of two. Either they started developing the frame before the 580 battery was out, or I think this theory makes more sense. When building a lightweight bike and you go with the TQ motor, the small compact motor, does it really make sense adding a heavy battery? I think at least it makes sense going with the smaller, lighter battery to keep the motor system weight down. So, is this bike really light? The Canyon Spectral ONfly CF Ltd at 8,999 euros. We weighed it in at 19.4 kilos, but that's including these quite chunky Canyon pedals and the bottle cage. So we are guessing about 18.8 kilos for this bike in size large. And that's a good weight considering the specs. Sure, it's not the earlier, heavier 38 forks, but still 36 forks at 160mm travel. That's still nice and solid. And it's the Fox factory, 160mm. Rear suspension, Fox Float X factory. I like that one too. This bike hasn't got the new Maven brakes, but it's got the Code Stealth Ultimate, or Code Ultimate Stealth brakes. And they really scrub hard too. And it has of course got SRAM axis transmission wireless shifting. And it's the XX top of the line version. Another piece of kit I really like, it's the wheel set. The Reynolds Trail Black Label Expert, I believe. The 329 rim at the front, 327 at the back. And I like this wheel set. It makes so much sense going with a slightly burly tire and combining it with a very light wheel set or a light rim. These Reynolds wheels are like sub 1600 grams. That's nice for an EMTB. And I like combining a light wheel set, a light rim with a slightly burlier tire. Yeah, sure, it's just Exo Plus, but they're not that bad. It's like a kilo per tire. And they're burly enough to avoid pinging off obstacles that you can easily do with a lighter tire. It's got decent rebound damping in the sidewalls, making for a settled ride. And combining that with a lighter rim, In total, you still have quite low rotating mass, and yeah, I like the feel of that for the steering. A light and sort of easy steering feel. Oh, and look, no cable routing through the headset. Then there's the frame geometry. We have ridden a few Canyons before, the Neuron On, the Neuron ONfly, the Strive On. And for us, at just over 180 centimeters, we definitely preferred size medium. On other bikes, we usually go large, but it seems Canyon frames are quite big for the size. So we got on this Spectral ONfly. It felt nice, so we assumed it was a size medium. It wasn't. It's a size large. And Canyon tells us they've done some changes to the frame, sort of sizing down a bit, make it comparable to other brands. I don't know exactly when it started, but newer frames like this one, they're a tad smaller, and yeah, size L is perfect for us. This bike, even though it feels a bit smaller, it's not really small at all. 1280mm wheelbase is quite long for a size large, especially for 150, 160mm travel EMTB. And when the chainstays are just 440mm long, naturally the front center has to be long, and it is reflected in the reach measurement. That's 495mm. That's quite generous for a size large. The C-tube angle, effective C-tube angle, 76.5 degrees. And that might not sound all that steep. I mean, it's nice and steep, but these days we can go 78 plus degrees. But I think it makes sense not going too extreme on the C-tube angle. This bike with this mild motor, it's nice pedaling above motor cutoff speed. It's nice pedaling with minimal assistance. And then it makes sense not being pushed too far forwards on the bike. Better for your knees, really. It doesn't put so much stress on your knee. It doesn't compress the knee joint too far when pedaling. And then there's the head tube angle, 64 degrees. I've come to like 64.5 degrees, so this isn't too far off, but it's quite slack for the category. Not going too slack means the steering remains quite light and the handlebars won't fold as you turn sharp, especially when going slow. Still, 64 degrees, it's not far off, and Canyon makes it work very well. I'll get back to that too. A sort of disadvantage with riding a super light EMTB is that it usually isn't as stable and confidence inspiring as a full power, heavy, full fat EMTB usually is. We usually find the bike will ping off obstacles. It won't be as settled and calm on the trails. It will sort of move around as it goes over chatter and obstacles. But that's not necessarily down to the lower weight of the bike. These bikes often have flimsier tires, less rebound damping in the sidewalls, they have shorter travel, flimsier suspension. This 18.8-ish kilos bike, that's quite light too. But Canyon decided to go a bit burlier on the suspension and on the tires. And that should improve the sending capabilities. You wouldn't expect this light, mild, low power EMTB to be a climbing specialist. And, well, the answer is yes and no, depending on where you're coming from. I mean, if you're used to riding full fat, full power EMTBs, this bike can't keep up. Going up all the steep climbs we usually do, sometimes we just completely run out of power. We could be in the lightest gear standing on the pedals and just coming to a complete stop. If you come from a non-assist bike, and I believe Canyon might be sort of targeting that crowd, yeah, it climbs so well. You get up stuff you wouldn't dream of climbing on a regular bike. Or alternatively, you can go quite steep climbs just pedaling calmly, and you'll get to the top feeling quite relaxed, ready for the descent. It's in no way comparable to a full power EMTB motor, but still, there is nice support. And on the flatter trails, that's of course where this kind of bike should shine. The short rear end makes it fun and playful. The steering is surprisingly sharp and precise, so when going on flatter trails, we often found ourselves pedaling way above motor cutoff speed, and this bike sort of inspires us to do so with a TQ motor. It feels worthwhile keep pushing above motor cut speeds, as opposed to a full power EMTB, when you get a lot of drag. Sure, you could keep pushing from 25 to 28, but it's a lot of work and it doesn't feel worthwhile. It very much does so on this bike. So on lighter terrain, this bike was pulling away from the other bikes when we were testing, like the 150, 160, 170 mil travel full power EMTBs. When approaching the descents, this bike arrives with a head start, and surprisingly, it maintains it on the descents. Like going into steep, narrow descents, you have to do a bit of braking to navigate the trees. This bike it performs perfectly well. The other bikes aren't catching up. And then the trails sort of open up, and you let go of the brakes, and the speed picks up, and still it keeps the lead over the other bikes. They're not really catching up. And that's surprising for a lightweight bike. But the 4-bar rear suspension with quite low anti-rise, it feels so nice and planted when descending and braking. There's no skipping. The rear wheel isn't losing traction sliding out. So it's one of the more, if not the most capable, confidence-inspiring lightweight EMTB I've ever ridden and descended. Canyon introduced the KISS, Keep It Stable Stupid, I believe. It's this plate on top of the down tube, and there are springs inside the top tube, head tube, that indirectly attaches to the steering tube of the fork. Okay, Canyon calls it KISS, K-I-S, Keep It Stable, but shouldn't it be a stupid at the end? I mean, who needs help returning the handlebars to the neutral position? We tried adjusting the plate a bit, slackening it, and immediately I noticed the steering was becoming very active, and just riding slowly, I was constantly correcting the steering. I didn't like that at all. And then I tried moving it to the bottom, which increased the spring tension. And I didn't like that either. The handlebars were so slow, so eager to return, and when riding no hands, sitting on the bike, moving side to side and shifting my balance to steer, that was quite difficult. I had to move quite a lot. Well, I guess I would become used to these different settings if I had to, but I very much enjoyed the first setting we rode, so I soon shifted it back to some kind of middle setting. To me, it seems the KISS system has allowed Canyon to go more aggressive on the geometry, while mitigating the disadvantages of a slacker head angle. I mean, 64, it's not super slack, but when we removed the tension of the springs, sure, we didn't really like the experience. So quite surprisingly, we really enjoyed this Keep It Stable Stupid system. So to sum it up, the Canyon Spectral ONfly. It's a fun and inspiring ride on flatter trails. It can be faster than the full power EMTBs because it inspires you to pedal above motor cutoff speed, and it's less work pedaling above motor cutoff speeds. And Canyon has done a great job of creating a lightweight EMTB that maintains much of the stability, the confidence-inspiring ride that we're used to from full-fat, full-power EMTBs. Sure, it doesn't climb like a full-power EMTB, nowhere near, but depending on your expectations, the TQ motor might still be enough. I mean, if you just need assistance to get up, it will give you that. but the TQ motor might be more attractive to the non-assist crowd rather than the full power, full fat EMTBers. So we are quite surprised about the Canyon Spectral ONfly and how Canyon has managed the compromises, creating what is indeed quite a light bike with such a stable, confidence-inspiring riding characteristics, and keeping the steering light thanks to the KISS system. Well, that's my guess at least. That's it. Appreciate any likes and subscribes. Thanks for watching.